We will now be starting with the final session for this conference. It is entitled The Future of Alternative Dispute Resolution. The flow of events will be with three speakers coming out on stage to deliver their presentations, and after which it will be followed by a panel discussion which will be chaired by a moderator. Up on stage will be our first speaker, Datuk Professor Sundra Rajoo, Present Director of the KLRCA, with his slides on the future, kicking on the future of alternative dispute resolution, in particular for Malaysian sports. Datuk Sundra.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the sessions. They have decided to drag it until 7 o'clock so that you just don't waste time. You go straight to the reception. But I persuaded them that we should stop a bit earlier. That's why you see we give a free hand to the organizing chairman. He has different ideas. But anyway, we have actually chosen suddenly. You'll find in the last 8 months, there's all this talk about sports arbitration in Malaysia. And I think Richard has been also instrumental partly for that. That's why he made him organizing chairman. But there is a reason for why this particular topic has come up. We have been looking at how to improve actually the general level of sports in Malaysia, because we seem to rank on the bottom side of everything. So except for badminton, I think even badminton the guy got caught for doping. So we still seem to have a serious problem. So we need to actually get some kind of systemic arrangement on this. And what we looked at is that I'm going to talk about the following things. First thing is that is there a need for dispute resolution in sports, in Malaysian sports? And then what are sporting disputes? And then what are Malaysian sporting disputes? What is the current status quo? And then, of course, we are going to propose a method. And I must say, coming up with this idea, I must acknowledge the work that was put in by Paul Hayes. Paul Hayes is an unpaid consultant to KLRCA in coming out with this particular arrangement and advising us how to do it, because it involves actually legal changes and also, more importantly, a will to do it. It's in Malaysia. I think when you want to do something, you have to come out with an idea, and after that you'll find there were a maze of things that you have to navigate to get it done. So what we did was, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to talk a little bit about the center. Basically, is that we do ADR in KLRCA, and basically we serve the Asia Pacific region. And when we serve the Asia Pacific region, we are looking at marketing our products and also serving the domestic market. So it cuts both ways. And one of the things that we have been trying to do as an ADR center, we have been trying to actually move away from the focus only on arbitration. So we are going away from international commercial arbitration into all areas that of some value to the society that we are in, and then hopefully that we can actually serve that in the overall context of the Asia Pacific. KLRCA, we are an international body located in Malaysia under a host country agreement. We are an ALCO body. We are like the UN, similar kind of status that the UN has, when a UN body has in Malaysia, that we are set up as a mission under the Asian African Legal Consultative Organization as a arbitral center. And what we do have is which other arbitral centers don't have in Asia. I can dare to say that. We have what is called privileges and immunities. And the privileges and immunities fall under the Privileges and Immunities Act in Malaysia. So we are accorded, the premises that you are in is actually has a diplomatic status. That means when we hold hearings here, it's inviolate. We have immunity in terms that whatever we do in good faith cannot be taken to court. So I think what the setup is, we are totally neutral in terms of the setup where the environment is concerned. And the Malaysian government has recognized it. We are fully funded by the Malaysian government, but we are independent of the Malaysian government. The kind of things that we do in the center is basically mediation, arbitration, adjudication, and domain name dispute resolution. And we hope to add sports arbitration as one of the next one of the services that we will be offering. We are named in two acts in Malaysia. One is under the Arbitration Act. We are the default appointing authority under the Arbitration Act 2005, amended 2011, and we are also the Adjudication Control Authority for construction payment disputes under the Construction Industry and Adjudication Act. Our products in arbitration itself and mediation and adjudication is basically, we have the arbitration rules, we have the fast track rules, we have mediation rules, we have the arbitration rules. In fact, this morning I was away from this session discussing the arbitration rules in the Islamic finance sector. Our caseload has been increasing steadily. I would like to think it's exponential, but suddenly statutory adjudication has come in, and there's another stream that is actually going to follow that. Up to date, so we in 2014 about 282 cases. It's quite small compared to the other centers. If you talk about CTAC, we are talking about thousands of cases. If you talk about Singapore, we're talking about similar numbers. But one thing you must never forget, we have a very big hinterland. Malaysia itself is quite large territorially compared to Singapore or Hong Kong. So that's why I find it very difficult to compare, and I've decided to go a different way. If we start to compare ourselves as international arbitration centers, then you are only serving the outside. We are serving both the outside and also domestically. Where adjudication cases are concerned, the Act was enforced last year. Last year we had 30 cases, and this year from January to April 10 we had 50 cases. So I expect to get about 150 to 200 cases this year. So the workload has been steadily increasing. So I think with that introduction that we can actually deal with whatever system that we set up, because we are handling different things. It's a matter of actually organizing ourselves, and also the recognition under the law that we have been given, particularly under the Arbitration Act. We think that we can actually propose a dispute resolution system for sports in Malaysia. And why is there a need for sports in Malaysia? I think first thing is that Malaysians are very interested in sports. It's very, very strange, and I think, you would have met enough football fans of the Premier League here. I think we are quite crazy about sports. I think and all the syndicates, the betting syndicates, are all from Malaysia and Singapore. It's true, isn't it? The guy who gets caught somewhere in England is spending time in jail. I think he's all from Malaysia and Singapore. There's tremendous interest. I suppose we are also gamblers, of the first rate. The guy who was actually setting up, in Las Vegas, Paul, Pua, is also Malaysian, So it's quite strange that I like. But one of the things that we have noticed, there is a tremendous number of organizations in doing sports, representing sports. So, I think the Olympic Council of Malaysia has on record 55 sports organizations. I don't know how many Singapore has, how many Hong Kong has, but one thing is that it reflects that we are a nation full of sports enthusiasts, and they are interested, and they form themselves into associations, and some of them have existed for years. Some of them are dormant, some of them are very active, but many of them are struggling. So then I think we look at the region. When we look at the region, there is a phenomenal growth in sports business in the ASEAN region. And I think one of the things that has been talked about in ASEAN is that we are supposed to be the third force. I think, in Asia, I mean in the Asia Pacific, it's supposed to be China, and then they are talking about the Japan, and then ASEAN, because I think a lot of people don't realize that the ASEAN common market has come into being. And it is a significant development politically and also economically for us. So when this has happened, I think there is actually a harmonization and also some kind of a common market developing. And I think in that situation, sports inevitably becomes an important device, an important event that will tie people together. So we have, in Asia itself, I think the figures are quite clear. Interest in sports is growing. Affluence brings more interest. People have more time for leisure. Even people don't have time for leisure, they have escapism. They watch sports. TV is there. Everything, I think, when you have let's say boxing, everything shuts down. In fact, Malaysia, the recent boxing match, I think everybody, even the guy in the police station was all watching. They were being arrested and they're all watching football together with the policemen. So I think it's quite interesting. And then I suppose that this is mirrored by the international establishments also coming in, and I'm not going to go into detail of that. So what is at stake? What is at stake? I think money. There's a lot of money involved in commercial disputes, commercial sporting disputes, and then now there are a lot of professional sportsmen coming in, and then the athletes, they are sportsmen, they are actually commanding money. In fact, it's very, very strange. Even our measly football league thing is importing foreign players, paying them good wages. In fact, maybe better wages than the local players. And I think it's becoming more and more professional. So I think this kind of thing, when there is a dispute, you need to have an effective dispute resolution mechanism. And why do you need an effective dispute resolution mechanism? You need to look at a number of things, and one is it has to be fair. You need to move forward. It has to be progressive. You need to be professional about it. You have to encourage professionalism, and then of course efficiency. I think Chris has touched this in detail, and of course fairness. We look at arbitration. Fairness, we look at arbitration because arbitration gives you an independent and neutral third party who can make a decision about the dispute itself, and there is opportunity for the parties to be heard, and our Arbitration Act is quite clear on that, and it is transparent procedures, although it would be confidential and private, but it is transparent within when you do it. And of course we like to say it's minimal cost, but I mean, hearing what Paul said earlier and even Chris, I think there is actually an issue of cost that we had to deal with, which we try to do in our rules later. Efficiency, the procedure itself can give you time and cost savings, and then you have to look at the appointment procedure, you have to look at the hearing process, and then also when the awards are made. And I think it was very, very interesting that, like the ad hoc CAS setup, arbitrations, is that you have to make very, very quick decisions so that the sporting event can go smoothly. So I think we are all concerned about that. And then the other thing is that sometimes there's a lot of sensitivity on sporting disputes. It becomes actually a political issue sometimes. I think sometimes the minister wades into something and then he realizes he shouldn't have done that. In fact, he may lose more he's more concerned not losing his divisional head or whatever it is than getting involved in a sporting dispute where he is being pulled in. And I think that's one of the things that we have. So I think, by nature, we have to actually emphasize the need for speed, fairness, and neutrality. And we believe, at least in KLRCA, that we should have a strong arbitration framework, and then where we can provide this service to actually the athletes, the sportsmen, to sporting federations, associations, and actually people who participate in sports generally, including people who sponsor and commercial organizations, and it's big business. So I think we have seen examples. We have seen examples of how it's done. Chris has explained how it's done, at least in the Premier League. We have seen the approach from Lausanne, how it's done internationally. So we have an idea of what we should do. So I think the next thing is that we should start to see how to deal with sporting disputes. Sporting disputes, there are two kinds of disputes. First is that, of course, to deal with the game itself. The other one is to deal with the business of the game. And I think sporting disputes are quite unique in the sense that it involves selection, it involves rules, game rules, it involves doping, and sometimes off-the-field conduct, and even integrity. That's where I think the betting thing comes in. What we found, of course, it could relate to basically the game itself, and it does not perhaps not relate to tort or contract or public law and all these things. So we need to actually look at a specific discipline now called sports law. That's what is coming into play, and I think even Tunku was suggesting just now over lunch that we should actually create a library, a repository of decisions and sports law. So looking at sporting disputes, there are actually selection disputes, match fixing, doping, and disciplinary matters. So what we think is that there should be an independent body standing alone trying to resolve sporting disputes, and then you must have a efficient and swift mechanism with an ability of limited appeals, because there's no point having an appeal structure that goes through the system, but limited appeals that quickly can make the decision and looks at the overall picture, athletes' welfare, livelihood, at the same time the integrity of the sports and promotion of it. And then it should be heard by experts who will be trained especially in the area, and the process itself should be transparent, and then the sporting bodies then focus on improving and promoting sport in the community. I think that is the overall intention. We take away the disputes, we deal with it quickly so that energy is not spent in actually bickering, but rather getting on with the game itself. In sports business disputes, we see contract disputes, we see agency disputes, marketing and sponsorship, broadcasting, sometimes financing and other ancillary issues. And I think it is big business. This is really big business. I think I don't have to go into that. Sometimes, I remember whenever there's a very big sporting event going around in the world, whether TV3 is going to carry it or RTM is going to carry it, it becomes so important, and the consumers really get upset when, let's say, RTM is not carrying it. Our national TV station is not carrying it. So, and there's financial implication to involve. So the current sporting dispute status quo is I want to explain what is going on now. The current framework is based on the Sports Development Act, and it is governed by the Section 23 and Section 24, and basically it says there is an internal procedure to resolve sporting disputes. That means each sports body will resolve the dispute within their organization. But look at Section 24. When everything fails, it just goes to the minister. It is like, it's like a nuclear bomb, I mean, you have actually a small thing, and then the final appeal is actually the minister. So it actually doesn't make sense. And I think the minister must have a plenty of time to deal with this, because you have so many organizations dealing with sports, and we have seen it. We have seen it every time, and we are trying to figure out how come the sports minister is getting involved in this. It is actually allowed statutorily in the framework where everything goes up to him. So I think this doesn't make sense to us. This doesn't make sense to us. I think he's got better things to do. I think he has things that he should be doing is policy matters, and he should actually deal with maybe overall development of sports. And I mean, it's quite crazy for him to resolve, let's say, a judo dispute for selection. They go up to him. So I think the referral. Of course, there is a sports advisory panel, and I think that's the sports commissioner, isn't it? The poor sports commissioner, who is a bureaucrat, is also caught, and he's caught also. So I think it has reached such a point now. Everybody is saying, can we actually come out of this system? Can we come out with an alternate system, or how we are going to deal with it? And that's where we have come in to suggest that perhaps that we should consider an alternate arrangement. The current framework, again, I think basically is that the minister can make regulations to regulate sports and all these things, but again, there is limited. The main body for sports in Malaysia is basically OCM, the Olympic Council of Malaysia. So we have actually focused with OCM. I remember I went up to Tunku Imran and basically said that, look, I will give the facilities. I have full facilities. I will finance the first part, but what I need you to do is you come and help us to actually provide the leadership to drive this change, and it has to be through that. It has to be through consultation and through the industry itself, the sporting community itself wanting to do it, but we will provide, KLRC will provide the support. And currently, I suppose there are, under the Olympic Council of Malaysia, there are ADR provisions in the setup in them, but ineffective. It is basically ineffective. In fact, I'm a arbitrator on their panel, and nothing has happened. But in the meanwhile, there's raging controversies going on. Basically, people going to court, half the time getting an injunction here. There's no real fisty fights. Basically, it's a brawl. And I think it has reached a point that we need to actually relook at it. Now, I want to go and repeat what Chris has said. There is actually wonderful features of arbitration. And one thing about arbitration is that, first thing, of course, it's flexible. It is actually confidential. Sometimes you don't want the publicity to go, of a small quarrel becoming a spectacle. And then, of course, I think there is speed, there is an expert tribunal, and then, of course, there is universal enforceability under the New York Convention. I don't know whether in domestic sports arbitrations that you will require that kind of remedy. What we have done is that we already have the Sundra model law in Malaysia. It is actually something that is very, very clear. It provides a good statutory framework which we should use. I think Chris talked about the 1996 Act, and Sundra model law is generally used, I think it's enacted about over 80 countries now, I think, and the law is very well developed, and in Malaysia I think we have used it since 2005, and it's applicable. And the default appointing authority under the Arbitration Act 2005 in Malaysia is the Kuala Lumpur Regional Centre for Arbitration, the director. So we already have that arrangement in Malaysia. So what we plan to do, let me go on to, is that moving ahead, we have suggested that we should have a new setup within the KLRCA providing the support. And what we propose to have is we will set up what is called the Malaysian Sports Arbitral Tribunal. And the idea, we will have an independent tribunal. It will operate under the auspices of KLRCA. It will be governed by a separate structure. There will be a Secretary General, and we will have an advisory board. It's very interesting. Just now at lunch, Tunku and I and Paul were discussing how to structure the actual board that will govern this, will operate this particular setup. And then what we will provide at KLRCA is the secretarial services. We have the Bangunan Sulaiman. In fact, I promised Tunku Imran and I have Olympic Council, I said where athletes are involved, we will go free, so that we kickstart this thing, and we will see how many things that we can resolve. But where there are commercial disputes involved, sporting disputes, then we will charge the normal rate. But where athlete selection, doping and all the other things, we will provide the facilities free, and we will subsidize the arrangement. And then of course, I think taking advantage of the immunities and privileges that we already have in place. Of course, our new premises, you are already here. You know what we have. We have actually we have 21 rooms. We take the two large seminar rooms, which can be converted into 50% hearing room, which was meant for investment arbitrations and very large country-to-country arbitrations. But in the main building itself, we have 19 arbitration hearing rooms, large, medium, and small. We have lots of breakout rooms, consultation rooms, and I think you are in an auditorium. We have arbitrators' lounge, cafeteria, outdoor dining, and we have a specialized ADR library. So in terms of facilities, we are there. So what we propose, this is where actually Paul has come in to help us. I think, Paul, I must acknowledge the work that you have done, because we need to. When you don't have the expertise, look for someone who has the expertise and is prepared to help you. And then I think the most important thing is that then modify it to our present situation. And what we have done is that we have come out with a set of MSET rules. We already started up the rules. It's already in place. We have also going to set up a specialist arbitration panel with training. So in fact, I think, Paul, we were talking about having the first set of training in September, even before the Act gets into. If we manage to, we will actually able to amend the Act. Tunku Imran has actually spoken to the minister. Minister said, come anytime and show me what it is. And I think we will get it. I spoke to the Attorney General yesterday. He is supportive. So I think we may get the thing through, provided we can show them clearly what we want to do. And we have done all the amendments to the Act. All the amendments, I think we already know what are the amendments we have to do. And then I think the very important thing, we also have to have a flexible cost structure. And I think this is where KLRCA has given the commitment that we will subsidize it to kickstart this thing. We don't know how much it's going to cost, but I think if we get it going, then we will be able to actually appreciate how it goes. And eventually, I suspect what will happen, that there will come a point that we can self-finance it. Then I think the other thing is that logistics issues, KLRCA will handle it. And then it is accessible both to parties and the panel, the center itself. And then we will provide the secretarial documentation, appointment of panel and all these things. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recruit staff and set up an entire system. So MSAT rules itself, when you go through the rules, and I must acknowledge the work of when we first started this, we had this idea about 3 years ago, and I got Datuk Bill Davidson and Vinay Pradhan to work on modifying the fast track rules, KLRCA fast track rules, to actually have a basis to do sports arbitration. And Datuk Sia of OCM came to see me, and he said, look, can you actually provide something where we can have that? So we worked on it, and Datuk Bill and Vinayak came up with the product, and we put forth to the group, and I must tell you, the politics in OCM is quite thick. It's amazing, So, here I am, I said, okay, I think it's very straightforward. Then I say it's a bit more complicated than that. So you have to get the head honcho. You can't actually work at that level. VPs and all these things doesn't work. You have to get the chairman himself to buy in. So that's why I went to see Tunku Imran. And Tunku Imran, I must say, when I became director in 2010, he, through Vinay Pradhan, alerted me that CAS was looking for an alternate hearing venue. He alerted me. So we put in an unsolicited bid to CAS, and we got the alternate hearing venue. We signed that agreement, and we're already having a number of CAS hearings that are going on in Malaysia, in KLRCA itself. So we're going to build on that. So we have a relationship with CAS. So with that, I actually told Tunku Imran that basically we need to get our act together, and perhaps we try to link to CAS through the KLRCA cooperation agreement. So, and we try to actually share the best practices and expertise, and then and when you don't have expertise, bring expertise from outside, learn how to do it, and then we already have hearings going on in KL, in the center, so we can actually build on that work that is going on already here, and then we try to make MSAT a world-class mechanism from the start. We have a pilot scheme, I think, going on, and then what are the objectives? We want to actually look at sporting disputes for both national and international. So we try to deal with it first institutionally, and then we will conduct it at first instance in Kuala Lumpur or in Malaysia, and then it also, where it's possible, we will have a limited appeal to CAS. Limited appeal. We have actually not worked out what will be appealed, but we will have a limited appeal. That link with CAS will be there. But because it's so expensive, I think, Paul, you have actually hit the say. We will try to work it out in such a way that the matter will be resolved in Malaysia itself. And then I suppose, of course, we need to have it cost effective, and then we want to develop this specialist expertise from KLRCA, and it will not be limited only to Malaysians. We like to take people from internationally, from the region, from Asia, internationally. We will create that panel, and we intend to train people for that. And of course, we want a legal and enforceable binding award. So what we intend to do after that, as I said, we will have that link with CAS, and with that link, we hope to get it going. Now, what is the roadmap? Where are we now? We have made the amendments, proposed amendments to the Sports Development Act. The Sports Commissioner has approved it. Now it has to go to AG's chambers. We have come up with a draft set of rules for MSAT. So the next step basically is for OCM and KLRCA and other bodies, basically the Sports Commissioner and AG's chambers, to agree that this is what we want to do. And I think Tunku Imran is going to chair the next meeting, and we are going to have first discussion, and then after which we will finalize it, and then a second discussion, and then a briefing to the minister, and then hopefully Parliament will enact it and we will go. So I don't know how long it will take, but I think maybe within this year. We hope to go within this year. So I think with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sundra. It does look like it will be a very exciting time for the development of sports, both on the dispute resolution and both in alternative dispute resolution as